What's good, fam? It's Tuesdays with Tawana. Happy to be here on today. So grateful to have you in the place where we chop it up for another episode of Tuesdays with Tawana. And today we're going to talk about toxic assumptions. I am Dr. Tad, your host and your curator for this space where we build community, one Womanist episode at a time. So welcome to those who are here for the first time. If you are here for the first time and you want to engage in dialogue and add some comments or some questions, just feel free to add it in the chat and I will insert your voice into this narrative. For those who've been here from day one, thank you for your amazing love and support. Hey, my beautiful sister, Tanisha, so good to see you. I hope to see you this weekend. I'll send you a text. So let's get it popping. Just a few housekeeping items. You know, this is a sacred space, so we are here to build community and not here talk for the entire 30 minutes. So I would love to hear from you, and I am going to be asking some questions and hopefully you'll engage in some conversation. Hey, my friend, Miss Odessa. So good to see you. Blessings to you as well. Those who will be listening later on various podcast platforms. I am on Facebook Live, and those that come in and enter in the chat, I am inserting their voice into this narrative. First and foremost, I gotta say happy birthday to my goddaughter, Nakia. Today is her birthday, and she is the greatest gift that a godmother could have. Her mama, thank you, Joss, my dear friend, my sister, for choosing me and for entrusting me in her care and support and love, and just watching her grow into an amazing woman, absolutely amazing. So happy birthday to my Nikila. I love you to the moon and beyond. I am so proud of you, proud of who you have become and who you are becoming. Oh, I love you so much. A couple of other things. So today we are going to talk about toxic assumptions, and we're going to do some level setting in the beginning. Just talk about some, I guess, worldly definitions of toxicity and assumptions. And then we're going to merge our analysis, our Black analysis when it comes to toxicity and assumptions and the outcomes that happen when those two things meet, and they're not necessarily pleasant. So I want to send loving prayers to Reverend Carolyn Habersham, who will not be on today. So if those who are listening and those who are on, Reverend Carolyn Habersham is a faithful participant. And so let us send love, light, healing, and prayers to her. I do also want to acknowledge Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And we talked a little bit about this last week, how the layers of the challenges for a child is almost boundless. Like, it's countless. It's so much, because a child is to be cared for, right? Someone is responsible for that child to eat and to go to school and to bathe and to do other things. And when you add childhood cancer to that, the caregiver, parent, mother, father, the caregiver is responsible for insurance that we know that we as a diaspora have challenges with access, getting the child to doctor's appointments and numerous doctor's appointments with numerous teams, and then to watch your child through the process of healing. Sometimes I say healing ain't easy. The process of healing, not only for the child themselves, but for the parent themselves to experience it and then to be able to navigate that space of healing. So send loving prayers and healing prayers to those who are healing in the midst of childhood cancer. And then finally, Suicide Prevention Month. I'm grateful for the language justice that has been inserted into the suicide narrative as someone who died by suicide versus putting the onus on the person and saying they committed suicide. I think it offers a freedom, an area of honoring the quest for mental wellness that was not achieved. And it also offers an opportunity for grace and compassion and mercy. So we honor those who have, lost beloveds in this physical realm to suicide. And those of you who are listening or might be listening later, you can always dial 988 for help and support for suicide prevention and the Suicide Lifeline, because we want you to live and we want you to receive the necessary help that you need so that you may live and not die to societal ills, including the lack of attention that we give to mental wellness and mental health. We are now speaking out about it and removing the guilt or the shame from it and offering empathy and compassion and love and prayers and light in the midst of darkness. So I see you, I love you, and know that you are more than enough. You have a gift to bring into this world, and we need you. We need you as a part of this community. Last week we talked about limiting beliefs. Well, you have a limitless self. Your boundaries are expansive. You can dream and dream big of beautiful things, and you are so powerful that your words manifest. Your words cause things to manifest, and we want powerful living things to manifest. Thank you, Tony. Breathe. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Hey, Chandel, my twin. So good to see you. So we want to keep in mind and in our hearts and sending beautiful energy and love and light to those who are in the process of healing, those who are striving for mental wellness, and for those who are caregivers, family members, friends who are traveling this healing journey with those who are on this quest of health and wholeness. So, speaking of health and wholeness, shout out to my brother. I got my faith shirt on. So it's, for me, it's faith. It is sometimes not understanding, but understanding that I will get through this. Sometimes I don't know how, when, and where, but my faith is knowing and believing in order to see it. Not seeing to believe it. It's believing it to see it. So I'm so grateful for my brother who is always gifting me with such nice stuff. Such nice stuff. So let's talk about toxic assumptions for a little while. This world, I don't even know where to begin. This world, I don't know if it was our 3-year lockdown with COVID, and now that people are out, people have forgotten how to communicate. People have forgotten how to greet each other or smile or have this air of joy or good customer service or patience. And I think many of us have lost those skills when we were in, isolation, if you will. And it has become quite toxic to the point where we, of course, as the Black beloveds we are most likely to be negatively or adversely impacted by these behaviors. For instance, there was a young man, I don't have his name pulled up, but he was shot in his car, windows up, by police officers. Make it make sense. Please make it make sense. There was this brawl at a wedding. It was with what appeared to be white people and white cops, and it still doesn't justify the behavior of the police officers. They knocked a woman out, like flat out unconscious, and she, from what the part of the video that I saw, she wasn't even, it was the one in the red dress that was really involved who kicked the police officer in his nuts and all of that. And sometimes you got to defend yourself against the people that are called to protect and serve us. And so where is the, de-escalation? Where is the contextual response and thinking and being able to think on your feet? I understand when you feel your life is in danger, but you got a gun, a taser, and a stick, and you got someone with no weapons, and you're attacking folk and killing folk. The preacher in Georgia, deacon, who was killed for a traffic stop, and he wasn't like, it doesn't matter what he was doing. He didn't deserve to die. I'm not even going to go down that route. But it was a traffic stop, and they pulled him out of his car. They lied. They pulled him out of his car, and he kept saying, help me, I can't breathe. Thank you, Tanisha. The other young man, let's speak his name, the one in the car with the windows up who was shot by police, Eddie Azari, is that it? I think that may be how you pronounce it, but we speak Eddie's name, and we speak his name, because now we have another whose blood is crying from the ground. We have another with the deacon whose blood is crying from the ground because he was killed due to an erroneous traffic stop. So let's now delve into toxic assumptions, right? So I'll give you a simple example before we go into the definitions to kind of level set where we are, right? So you know that I have metastatic breast cancer. I am in active treatment, although I am grateful to be on break right now. I've been on break for the last it's going on 3 months, and I'm grateful that all of my numbers look good, and so have my oncology appointment this week. So anyway, I have metastatic breast cancer. And when I was, if someone were to walk up to me right now, they may say something like, wow, you must not be dealing with the negative effects of cancer. You look great. that is an assumption, right? You didn't ask me how I was doing. That somehow became your truth, that I don't feel pain in my body every day. I don't have to get extra rest than the average person needs to rest. That I have chemo brain or chemo. You made an assumption based on what you see that I am well. Or someone will come and say, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. You look great. Do you not know how I lost this weight or why I lost this weight? Because of chemotherapy and so on and so forth. So those are assumptions, right? It's based on their truth. So let's look at the definition. Just a Google definition. Y'all know how I do. Just something simple. Google definition of assumptions is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. So you did not inquire about anything about my being, my humanity. You just assumed that the color of my skin is a threat. You just assumed that because I know my rights and I will not conform or acquiesce to what you are asking me, police officer, that I am now insulting you and hurting your ego, that you now put me in harm's way, either by killing me or harming me. You've made an assumption when you see me walking down the street and I am dressed a particular way, that you have the right to violate me. Or you make an assumption that because of, my locks, that I shouldn't work in a corporate space because my hair is not appropriate. You make these assumptions that it's a thing that is accepted as true, but no proof. You make an assumption that black folk are lazy when in fact our mere existence is against the status quo of grinding and working and thinking about self. We take time for family. We take time for rest. We take time for self-care. We take time to work. We do it on our terms and not on your terms. So you're making assumptions without proof. And what is the proof? Just a simple moment to ask me a question. How do you do what you do? How do you know what you know in a positive way with the intention of being positive and not negative? Like, what you know? How you know that? You're not supposed to be that smart. You're a black woman. As a matter of fact, everything you learned was during the time of your ancestors' enslavement. Assumptions that are not based on any facts or any proof. So now, as bad as that is, right? And please pop in the chat if you have another definition of assumptions in your words. I'll be happy to insert it into this narrative. But let's talk about toxic. So we know toxic can be poisonous, right? If it's, a mushroom that's toxic. Some mushrooms you can eat, some mushrooms you can't because of the toxicity. But the toxicity I want to talk about, and again, simple Google search. Very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. Either an unpleasant, pervasive, which is unwelcoming. It's an unwelcoming influence. Or an insidious way, which is harmful effects. Like your intention is to be harmful. So when we add toxicity or toxic behavior to assumptions, that's when we now can talk about, or we can talk about it, but now it enhances the conversation and opens up the door to have a conversation about racism and sexism and patriarchy and misogynoir and homophobia and all the other things that dehumanize us. because of this toxic assumption. Your toxicity is assuming that I can't do something. Your toxic thought and assumption is assuming that I am not good enough. Your toxic assumption is thinking that I am not supposed to live soon to be 8 years with metastatic cancer because I am a black woman. Your assumption is that, oh, we don't need these books in these schools because this is not our truth. Your assumption is based on falsehood or based on something with no proof or no facts. So because of your power, you are using your power in a toxic way that causes people to assume that these stories aren't true and we can just get rid of them because of white people's guilt and shame. Toxic assumptions will lead me to believe that somehow it was Breonna Taylor's fault that she was shot and killed. That somehow that Eddie did something. He had to do something to make the cops respond in the way that they did. That the woman who is in, or a beloved who is in a toxic relationship, that person had to do something that warranted abusive behavior. Toxic assumptions. The toxicity is what's killing us. The assumptions is what's leading to the murders and the killing of us, mind, body, and spirit. Because your toxicity now has a level of intentionality. It has a level of selfishness. It has a level of power over instead of power with. It has a level of greed. It has a level of power and control that then dehumanizes another through your BS assumptions about someone. Like assuming that someone who is playing in a Walmart with a toy gun is causing or posing a threat when they're struggling with mental wellness. Or, older women where cops burst in the doors. Not only is it the wrong apartment, but you're going to take an elder and arrest her because of your assumption, because of the neighborhood that she may live in, because of the redlining that you caused. And now she, is at risk of losing her freedom and her life and her home. As a matter of fact, in New York, that happened years ago, where I think it was Eleanor, it'll come to me, where she ended up dying for reasons that just are senseless and rooted in power and control and toxic assumptions. So let's talk about toxic assumptions in the Black community, because we need to have a real conversation. When we're talking about building community, we need to have a real conversation about the assumptions that we have about each other. I am grateful that I co-founded and I am the executive director of a beautiful organization that doesn't necessarily look at your educational acumen and disregarding your experience. So if your experience, it outweighs your lack of, for lack of a better term, lack of, higher education, but your experience shows that you can do this job and you have the experience and you trained and self-learning and whatever. Why feed into this whiteness where we got to look at the metrics? Because you're no longer a human being. You are now what you have ascribed to in white supremacy culture. Like, you got to go to a PWI. You got to go to an Ivy League school. You need to get that advanced degree. When I got my advanced degree, it was for none of that. It was for my people so that I can be informed and I can begin to write, because we need more Black women and Black beloveds writing books and writing articles. We need more Black women and Black beloveds at the Capitol and in these streets and in these classrooms being paid more than what they're worth. We need all of that, and with that comes experience and learning. But how do we in the Black diaspora begin to denigrate, dehumanize, and disrespect one another because we don't live up to a certain white standard? Like, redlining is real. So in impoverished communities, why aren't we loving our beloveds in impoverished communities the same way we would in communities that have access, that have money, that can afford to be a part of these social groups? And we totally ignore those who are impoverished and in abusive situations and in food deserts, and schools don't have libraries, they don't have gyms, they're not safe to play outside because right in the not too far from the community where I am, a young lady was leaving Duval High School. There was an altercation. She was walking home from school and they was shooting and ended up shooting and killing her. So when do we show love to beloveds in our community with differing life experiences that don't have to necessarily be degrading or dehumanizing? No, we're all not perfect. Yes, crime exists. Yes, by any means necessary, people do what they need to do to survive, whether you believe it's right or wrong, righteous or not. It is happening. And how, last I checked, that we are supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, just like God loves us, or the higher power or the universe actually loves us. So how do we then serve others in our own community and stop waiting for other people to take care of that problem while I'm sitting over here chilling? What is it that I can do to speak life into young people that have been surrounded by violence, by gun violence, by drugs, by domestic violence, by violence in the schools where the SROs come in and they're dragging students out of their seat? Young people see this and then they begin to embody it, and then you're mad when they grow up to exhibit that same type of behavior because no one is showing them anything different. So how can we come together to avoid these toxic assumptions, not waiting for white supremacy to do it, white power to do it, or the racists to do it? We can't wait for Florida to get it together. We can't wait for we can't wait for them to do it for us. We must be in position to create those environments that offer love and compassion and empathy and support, and without us just assuming the worst. We want to come in with best intentions. We want to come in fearless. Like, we don't want to then copy the behaviors of police officers or those white people in power who look at the color of my skin and all of a sudden they're clutching their pearls in their purses, or they're grabbing their gun, which they thought was a taser. And so we don't need to ascribe to that, beloveds. You know why? Because we are divine. We are better than that. We are communal. We have survived the worst of the worst. I'm not talking about oppression Olympics. I'm not saying that there is no other non-white group that hasn't gone through, horrific times. I can only speak from my experience and my ancestors and honor those and create this type of space as an example for them to tell their stories, like our indigenous brothers and sisters. We need to remove toxic assumptions out of our lives and just have this curiosity about each other. It's called epistemology. It's called a way of knowing. Ontology is a way of being. So when do we bring those two things together and we have a curiosity to acknowledge your humanity as a way of being, and then we examine and we ask questions about, how do you know what you know? What can I do? How can we learn and grow together? How can we see each other with dignity? Because dignity works both ways. It's not just all about me poking my chest out with this dignity and a self-confidence that becomes toxic. But dignity is the dignity that I see in myself, I also see in you. Or the dignity I see in you, I then see in myself. We can remove this toxic assumptions when we see beloveds walking down the street dressed a certain way. When we see folk working under certain conditions, and you make assumptions. We, as the Black diaspora, have power to change that and to shift that narrative. That narrative must be shifted in order for us to survive. That's not contingent upon waiting for white supremacists to do it, or waiting for white power to do it, or waiting for those who are white supremacist thought. You don't have to have white skin to have white supremacist thought. Just like you don't have to, I won't go down that route. Maybe we'll save that for another episode. But the toxic assumptions, toxic meaning it's harmful, it's insidious, and assumptions is believing your truth without any proof. So I'm not assuming that I'm here by the grace of God. I got proof. I got receipts. I'm not assuming that I have beloved community. I got receipts. I got proof. And even if it wasn't contingent upon all the external things, I can say to myself that I am enough. Why? Because I have proof. If I scan the past 53 years of my life and I look back over my life and thank God that I am still here, because I should have been dead, sleeping in my grave. I am so glad that when I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more, but the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, and from the waters lifted me. Now safe am I. I say all of that because I have receipts for myself, which then spreads that energy of instead of toxic assumptions, it is believing in you. Believing in your humanity, seeing your humanity, making beautiful posits of thought and reaction or responses into building a community, one conversation, one inquiry, one level of support, one smile, one hug, one greeting at a time. That's what it'll take. And we can continue to build community and share our resources and not follow white supremacy in their individualistic ways and harmful ways, and ways that are killing us mind, body, and soul. So for our next episode, I'm doing some light research. People kill me when, I'm doing research. You Googled it? That wasn't nice. I'm sorry. Just looking into the whale and how, and I don't know where I saw this, whether it was a meme or whatever, and how the whale lives in an environment that can kill them if they don't come up for air. They live in a deadly environment until they come up for air. I want you to think about that, and think about the moments that you need to come up for air so that you don't let this society and its toxic assumptions kill you. mind, body, and soul. This is Dr. Tad with Tuesdays with Tawana. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. I love you from the moon and beyond. And we will continue to do Tuesdays with Tawana every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, where we build community one womanist episode at a time. I love you, beloveds. Peace and blessings. Ashe.